So tonight I have with me Kim Skubic, who is a private investigator and also running a cold case division. I'm going to have her tell you about her background and how she got started and why she does it. She is very special. She is the person you want looking at your case because she cares. Kim, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Sheila. It's always a pleasure. So a little bit about my background is in 2017, I attended a conference called CrimeCon because I was always interested in true crime. And I never really pursued a law enforcement career. I never was interested in law enforcement as a career, but I was always interested in true crime. And I have an English background. So I was an undergrad English major in creative writing. So I love to read. So in 2017, I attended CrimeCon because it was close to where I was living and it was an easy ticket to get to. It was very close. So I took a chance, went to it, attended it on my own. And back then they offered sessions that were case related and they really delved into the details, which is everything that I wanted. So then in 2018, I attended CrimeCon again and attended your PI workshop because it was everything I was looking for. So I got an email from CrimeCon announcing your workshop. And it said, we're going to look through a case as a group, crowdsource basically together, crowdsource the information, come together with all different backgrounds and perspectives, and work a case in the limited amount of time we had. But we got the materials ahead of time. So that was my introduction to you. And I didn't know how it was going to go because I'd never met, I don't think at that time I'd met any private investigators in person. So I believed in, the shady, slimy kind of PI that chases, scummy people. And that was never what I wanted to do. I wanted to help people. So I didn't want to chase, the fringe of society and do that, or, sit in vans and do hours on end of surveillance. That's not my, that's not my gig. So when you introduced the case that you introduced, and I don't know if we can get into those specifics, but it was the Jonathan Cruz case, a wrongful death case against, it actually went to trial in 2022, so we can talk about it, it's on the public record, but a wrongful death suit against his girlfriend or potentially ex-girlfriend at the time was found to be liable in a civil suit of committing the murder of Jonathan Cruz. So anyways, back then we were introduced to the case and we were introduced to Jonathan's family. I remember Pam Cruz and John Cruz were there. And I believe, wasn't it a neurosurgeon or and their lawyer who I ended up meeting in person in 2022 when I attended the trial. But through that, I learned your approach on cases, and that was how I wanted to have my career. Because what I saw in you was that you worried about the people that were involved. You wanted justice for the people that you're representing because they're voiceless now, because most of the cases that we tend to deal with are homicides or suspected homicides. And it really moved me, the fact that you were able to get other private investigators there to volunteer their time, and then in the room of people who were also willing to volunteer their time to analyze these cases in a way that can move their hopefully case forward and get to a trial or get to an arrest. I mean, ultimately we want arrests and convictions. So, but however we can get there, and prove to the public what the true story is most important. So from there, I, continued attending crime cons, but I wanted a more traditional education in criminal justice. So I was an English undergrad, but then I decided to get my master's in criminal justice so I could pursue this further. And I also I had no idea when I started this journey that it would lead to private investigation, but that's what my intent was in going and getting my master's in criminal justice. So then I was able to volunteer time with you, because in preparation to take the exam in the state I'm in, you need a certain number of hours annually and you need some experience. So I didn't have experience in law enforcement, but then with my education and experience with you, I was able to qualify to take the exam, which I did in March 2022, after all this time, finally. And that's when I passed and was able to then, in the state I'm in, you can obtain your license number, and you also, as a one-person PI, you can obtain an agency license. So that's how that works. So that's basically the journey.
Wow. And I did not realize when you came to CrimeCon that you weren't already in criminal justice.
Not at all.
That's interesting, because so there are certain people that I remember from CrimeCon that were very engaged, that asked a lot of questions. I know that you and John Lorden were friends and that he came because of you. And I appreciated the approach that you came with, that it's not just entertainment, that there's a family involved and there is a person that died at the end of all this. I want to know what you're doing now that you have your master's, now that you have your PI license.
So on the outs of all this, like totally separate from this life, I work with a professor from the university that I attended to teach media literacy skills to educators. So we think it's very important work because there's so much misinformation out there, and that's, kind of my other life. And then through the university I'm with, I learned of an internship through local law enforcement, that it was a cold case intern. And I applied and they accepted. I didn't know if they were going to take graduates, because sometimes they only want undergrads or, people still in the grad program, but they accepted me. And basically I told them I'm never leaving. So they, have about 100 cases from, the 60s on that they're tackling. They've really started going very hard with it since 2020. And yeah, now I have the opportunity to take these cases that some of them haven't been looked at in many years, and review them and organize information, much like Danielle does for the cases that I've been involved with you guys. And actually I base a lot of my organization on Danielle's charts, because they are so helpful. They give you so much information and you can always search them and reference them. So fantastic work. So but yeah, we delve into these cases, and again, it's really, in my role, I feel like I'm always trying to keep the victim and the families at the forefront. That's the whole purpose and reason why we're doing this, I think. And that's why I am very thorough, like Danielle is, in the work I've seen in the reporting that I present at the end of everything, only because it may never go anywhere. I may never get anything to go to trial. I may never get an arrest, but if one loved one comes forward and comes to the station and says, please look, what has been done on my dad's murder, I want whoever's there in that, at that time, to be able to pull up any of my work and search those files and say, we did this, we looked, And we looked at every single person that's involved in this case file, and we looked at every single thing, and we know this much. And even if we can't get it to this end state that we all wish we could, we worked it, and your person matters and you matter. And that's why we do it. So, you know, that's what I saw in you. That's what I see in Danielle. That's what I see in the private investigators that you're involved with. And that's, you know, why I do this work. I mean, I think back to the first case that I was ever really aware of as a young child, and it was Adam Walsh. And at that time, I was very young because he was also very young, and that's what struck me about it. But the fact, I couldn't even conceive at that time of an adult taking a child for nefarious reasons. I couldn't even imagine. And then to learn what happened to Adam and just the shock of that all, and then to see the strength of John Walsh and his wife, and the work that they've done from then on. I mean, it's been amazing. It just really affected me as a young child, and I never forgot that case. And I think that really is what sparked the true crime interest, because of the shock. And, you know, I couldn't wrap my brain around a brain that could do that to a young child, you know? So yeah, it really fueled my curiosity.
I actually appreciate that you can't wrap your head around it, because most normal people could never harm another human being. I always say when I hear people tell me, don't you get into their head? I actually don't. I may learn about them or their idiosyncrasies, but I don't want to get into their head. The moment I start understanding why they did it and how they did it, I need to get the hell out of this industry.
It's very true. It's a fine line where you can get really dark, and I understand that. It's just, it is always, I am shocked every day in this field, every single day, the things I learn. And I'm not smiling because it's funny. I'm smiling because I'm just shocked constantly at humanity.
Or lack of humanity.
Yes. Yes.
That's what I am always surprised at, the people that harm another human being and how many of them get away with it, how they're not held accountable.
That is what is so scary. And that's what I learned the further I get into this industry and field, because I can't believe how many people get away with the most horrendous crimes. It's not like it's not speeding violations that these people are on the streets. This is people that are very dangerous, that should not be living amongst us, and they're here.
They're at the PTA meetings, or they're at the soccer, you know, watching their child, or, you know, it absolutely throws me when a DA knows that this person did this and potentially could prove it if they did the work, and they don't care.
It's very disheartening when politics plays into anything, when it's such an important, you know, I mean, the cases we deal with are of the ultimate importance. I think to take a person off this planet is such a violation, you know, and to understand the limitations of the law, to get it over the hurdle, it's so frustrating, disheartening. And then when you have politics on top of that, where you have evidence that would hold up in a court of law, and then you have, you know, which we've seen in some of the cases that we've worked on, where you're really let down by the people that should be representing the people, you know.
They're supposed to be the voice for the victims, the advocate, whereas I have found they are the obstacle for justice instead of speaking out and putting people away. It is all politics. By one vote, that it could be somebody else in there. And I'm not getting into politics. This is the reality. people don't know who they're voting for district attorney. And I've asked people, why'd you vote for that person? No matter what county I'm in, I want to know why they picked their DA. And the answers I get are so uneducated.
I think most people vote by name recognition. So the more signs that they see, it sticks in their brain and then they vote. And not many people do their research, and not many people vote in general, which is just shocking, but
I went and worked for a candidate and very proud of that person to this day. What I was told while I was standing at the poll, a pencil could make someone vote for him. A pencil. Now, I knew he was a good guy and would do a good job, and he did. But how does that person walking by voting, who did no research at all, they had 6 different other people to vote for, and a pencil made up their mind?
That's so frustrating, because I do this, in my other life, the media literacy work. I feel like I had a solid base of media literacy and civics when I was a student. And I feel like that's lacking so much now. And yeah, it's just very dangerous. It's terrifying, really. Just
Well, now that you're in the industry and you're working it for these families, do you see the difference in a real investigation versus listening to somebody tell the story on a podcast? You now know the difference between what you can and cannot take to court, and the outrage you can have in both arenas, but one that counts is the evidence.
in working in this, I mean, an investigation takes so much time. I wish people really understood how much is involved in a case. And I'm not even talking about active cases that are happening current day. Even in cold case investigations, where you have the material all in a case file with law enforcement. So these are the first and only people that have direct access to all of the information from the case. It takes forever to go through that information, and you're not just going through in my experience anyways, you're not going through the information, a case file, in one-time deal. You don't know what you don't know. So when you start a case, you can read it from front to back, and then you have to start right over and then piecemeal things together that make sense, or you have to have recall of information, which, investigation is a lot of recall. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of patience, because you're doing a lot of mundane work, but it's crucial because at the end, it is putting a puzzle together. Whether you have straightforward details that say this is the guy that did it, these are the steps, whatever, you still have to build it in a way that it can go to, like you're saying, a DA, and the DA will take it on. Now, the difference you see in true crime documentaries and podcasts and, material that's created in a week, that's great sound bites and very, captivating information. You're pulled in to watch, of course, because they can bundle it up in an hour episode or 2 hours or 6 episodes or, whatever. I've been working cases since I started in 2022. So a year, and we're still interviewing people. We're still finding new people to interview. It just doesn't end. Many of these cases will never be, gift wrapped and then tied with a nice little bow. It's not going to happen. There's a reason why they're cold. But yeah, it takes dedication, it takes patience, it takes perseverance, it takes intelligence, it takes just time and effort and passion. Because if you don't care about what you're doing, you're going to get bored and you're going to be looking at the clock. I lose time because, I don't even pay attention to what's happening because I'm so enveloped in the material and engaged in what I'm doing.
And putting people's lives together, I find that fascinating. Who were they before they died? Who was the person, the suspect, before they committed the crime? How did they get to that perfect storm to create that horrible moment? I'm fascinated by every small detail. And what you said about reading and patience, you and I are involved in a case that I think the court records, one court record is 10,000 pages. So I'm dyslexic. That is a horror story to me. Luckily, I work in a community, and that's the difference is I can work in a community with somebody like Danielle, and she could break it up in her organization. And I love color coding, and she knows that, all the rainbow colors. And I know if I look at something and I want to know evidence, I have to look at yellow. If I want, pink, the people and who we've called and who we haven't. That case, we're 3.5 years in, and I don't think we've scratched the surface.
No. I have one case where I have so many suspects because it's just like an onion. More and more layers come out, and there's relevance to the idea that all of those people could be suspects. There's, people that are more likely to have done it, but they're still on the list. I mean, you just can't eliminate until you have, rock solid alibis or other proof, that alibis them in some way so that you can take them off the list. But it's all about lists, especially with cold cases. It's all about phone logs. It's really mundane stuff. So, but I love it. I don't find it mundane. I love digging and finding, the details and looking at old phone records and open source information and finding the information on these people or what these buildings used to be, or, yeah, it's fascinating to me, but it's not, how they portray it in these shows and in forensics and, you just send the DNA in and it's solved within a week. I mean, DNA takes so long to even be processed. And the likelihood that you get a hit, it's very small to me. I mean, even in 2023, with all the advanced technology that we have, and it's really exciting, what is out there. But yeah, it's still very tough.
Well, and exactly what you said, DNA is very hard. It's not something that in 1960 they took a sample correctly. It's not a criticism. It's just 1960, they had no idea in 95 that was going to be a thing.
Right.
In cold cases, you don't know if you're going to get a hit on DNA at all. And if you do, you don't know if that suspect is still alive. In some of my cases, they've passed away. So there's a death penalty case in Tennessee right now where the young man is, or not so young anymore, is on death row. And going through that case, you look at the witnesses and the other suspects in that case, and to make sure, if you're going to do the death penalty, you want to be doggone sure that person did the crime. There are so many doubts in that particular case. The person that everybody keeps pointing a finger to has passed away. So are you going to execute this guy even though there are questions?
Yeah. And the state I'm in is not a death penalty case, but that's why it doesn't matter. You don't want the wrong person to go to prison for these crimes, in my opinion, because then you have real murderers out on the street. I want to get it right. So we get the right, most violent offenders off the streets. They shouldn't be here. You can't take a life and live next to me. It's not okay,
No, it's not okay. And I think about the people that we know in our cases that the evidence really stacks up against them. And to think they're living their lives, having children, going to PTA meetings or going to the lake, whatever they do. And that person that night didn't have 12 people on a jury saying they were guilty and deserved the death penalty. That suspect gave him the death penalty without a judge. They didn't have a choice or a trial.
That's how I feel. I mean, to take a life off this planet in these brutal ways that we've seen, it's not an accident. These aren't people that just accidentally take a life. These are not the people I'm talking about. These are most of the time career criminals that are very violent offenders. In some cases, you have people that behave in such ways and they get away with it for a very long time, and it reaches a climax that is deadly for somebody else, and that also is not okay. So you have to be able to manage your life and your emotions. You don't get to act to the extent of harming others, so.
I do think that private investigators doing cold cases, what we do, could be a life and death case. And, that's where we have to get it right. If the original investigation was not done correctly, let's not make a mistake on it. And the mundane things that you talk about are vital, absolutely vital. There is a question I have about the stress of these cases. How do you handle the stress and what do you do to relax?
That's so funny that you asked that question, because I was just with family over the weekend, and one of my cousins asked the same exact question. She brings it up actually every time we talk because she is worried about it and the heavy nature of the work. I have always been interested in this stuff. So reading this material and viewing, evidence, I feel like it is a skill that not many people have. So I take it very seriously, because I don't take joy in looking at what I need to analyze for this work. But I know a lot of people can't, and I can't, so I will. And I think that's, one of my roles. So I don't internalize it and I don't take it personally, but I am obviously concerned for the victim and getting whatever justice at this point I can for them. They'll never be brought back. And, so it's never going to be okay. But I'm going to try and get as much justice as possible. That's one thing I take, in dealing with it. I look to that because I think of it as such important work. I do animal rescue too, and I take it very seriously as well. So I believe in it wholeheartedly. So, I do feel like it's a responsibility of mine, but then I'm also in therapy. I regularly attend therapy, and I am an advocate for therapy, because if you do ever need to decompress, and we're all involved in NDAs and we can't talk about it publicly or privately, and some things you just have to let go of, in somebody that can't take it. I mean, I don't tell details to anybody really, but if you have to talk about the week that you've been dealing with and just heavy stuff, because I'll tell you what, therapists don't want to hear details about it either, to be honest. So some of this stuff is very heavy. So I'm in a very privileged position because I do work with law enforcement. So it's easy to talk about details. And then they also have, a balance where, it's not all heavy stuff all the time. You take time to get away from the desks and socialize and, but yeah, I mean, and I listen to music, and I really do. I read somewhere that 5 songs a day of your, songs that make you happy can really boost how you feel. So I really have taken to it. I make sure I get my 5 in every day. And I really have found that on my way into work or my way in, when I'm going to analyze something really heavy or something, putting those songs on really boosts my energy level. I go in with a great mental attitude and I just get to work. So those are a few things that I do. And I hang out with animals a lot. So that's pretty cool too.
I love everything that you do. I am a huge proponent in therapy and mental health because it can wear on us. One day it'll just hit you and it's too much. And there are several times with that. And plus, because I take the cases so public, the stress that comes along with it. So I think any kind of therapy anybody can get, they should do it. And I'm a huge animal person, so I know what that does. I find that some investigators, though, lose themselves and start drinking because they can't take that mental image and their job is looking at crime scenes. I know that you can. I stopped about 3 years ago. I have Danielle do it because she can. I no longer can look at these victims. So you're right. I could do it for so long and then I just can't anymore because I got too invested in the victims. Okay. So you've gone way above and beyond most people that are in the criminal justice world. You are helping victims. You have the heart for it. What are you going to do in 5 years?
I really hope that I'm doing the same thing that I'm doing, to be honest. I've never been happier. I've never been prouder of the work I'm doing. I feel like it makes such a difference, even if, like I said, even if we can never get closure for these families. I just want, for me, these cases have to be worked. It's not even about what other people need to know, or if no loved ones of these victims ever come forward and look for information. The 100 people that represent dead people in my room, that I look at all that remains of them that I know now is their name on a case file box. They deserve more than that. And that's my role. And that's what I intend to do with my skills and my knowledge. And I will always keep learning because you never stop learning in this industry. And I think it's important to continue learning because everything changes so much. And yeah, that's my intent for the next 5 years. And I hope for many more than that, because I love it so much. And I think it's such worthwhile work. And that's why I have always loved you since the moment I met you, and have been inspired by you and driven to pursue all of this because you did it and you exposed us to it and you allowed me in to this world. Because without you, I never would have had these opportunities. I never would have met the people that I know. I would have never been involved with you and Danielle, which I value those relationships so much. I've learned so much from each of you, and I hope to continue doing for as long as you'll have me. So,
Well, that's forever. And I said it maybe not when we were recording, but the investigators I work with that all know you respect you. And that's a big feat in this group because it's a hard audience. We all work very hard. We all want the same things. You have come in and shown your heart, shown your work ethic, and you came for a work weekend that was chaotic and stressful, and you were the calm in that storm. You participated. Those are very hard and intense, but very worth it. I am so grateful to have met you, and I love the work you do.
you did it. I mean, honestly, you really, I can't say enough about you because I didn't even think anything like that existed in private investigation, because I really did think of just the fringe of what you think of, like just the scummy life that it could be, the sleazy life that, you know, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to do work that made a difference, and you represented all of that. And I'm so lucky that I came across that workshop, because it really kicked off everything for me. And I love you. I just
Oh,
love you.
same here, and I'm so proud of you. I can't tell you how proud I am. So, your work of those 100 victims is so important, and your values and the work that you do for each person. Not everybody knows that that's going on, but I believe that the victims somehow can get peace,
I
and
hope
you're
so.
bringing it.
I hope so. And I hope that by talking about things like this, that other departments are inspired to have cold case teams. No, I mean, it's not often you have resources to dedicate, but what they can do is they can reach out to local colleges and universities in criminal justice, and get those students in. They want to learn, they want to break into the field. Internships are so worthwhile. And, you know, if you have somebody on staff that really is interested in cold cases, a sergeant, a detective, you know, anybody, any department can do it. They just have to ask for help. And there are so many people that help. You know, there really are. I always think of Mr. Rogers, because he said, you know, in times of distress, basically look for the helpers. And in this work, I get to see so many helpers, and it really is heartening, because when the world is so crazy and we're all on this runaway train that is life at this point, you know, it's very helpful to see the helpers. You know, you're not the only one. You know, we have a lot of help and support, and that's why this is so great, because we all can reach out to each other and we'll support each other in this. It's not easy work, but it's crucial.
It means something. It means something to a family that was silenced. And that to me is very important. And I love the fact that you'll never lose sight of the victim's family. That brings me a sense of peace too, that these families need Kim. So thank you. And thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your evening and your life, and the value of what you do is priceless.
Thank you so much. It is my pleasure always, and my door's always open to you and whatever you need.